Extreme Grimes. Part 2. Written and narrated by Alan J. Walton. Harry whipped off the tablecloth in the dining room and lifted James' head up and made a place where, if there was to be bleeding, then Mrs. Coldsore would not have a stain on the sofa. James was out cold, as Harry rummaged in his bag in search of a suitable instrument. There was a small electric drill, some forceps, a retractor, and, most importantly of all, a nice collection of scalpels.
I'm sorry, James, for what I need to do to you. It's a personal thing. There is no excuse for a late payment. And even when I kindly gave you until midnight last night, you still failed to pay me. You know, it's not on. Even for a person like me, I thought I was being very reasonable, you know.
Harry had several ideas he wanted to try. You should know that he had wanted to be a surgeon, and second only to an undertaker. Both ways the money was good. Yes, revenge had to be extracted upon this defaulter, but the message needed to get out to all those who thought they could skip a payment or two. Harry only dealt with those in very serious financial trouble. There were perks, even for a defaulter. Take, for instance, Harry taking poor James's car. Totally illegal, but nobody would challenge him, as he had the full protection of those that meet in secret. Harry stared at the snoring figure before him and mused. What surgical technique could he try out this time? He got better and better over the years, and felt that he could contribute greatly to the world of medicine. Yes, he did like inflicting pain and suffering, but it had to have the added bonus of advancing his medical knowledge. He scratched his head, looking down at the instruments lying on the coffee table.
I just need to try a new procedure. The bleeder is going to die anyway, so I need to learn something new and different, you know.
The idea of opening up the chest cavity did rather appeal. He did have a retractor, but his eyes were drawn to James's head.
I think I'm drawn to his head,
Harry said to the silent room as he rummaged in his bag of instruments. The silence was suddenly broken, but the groaning sound of James just regaining an element of consciousness.
Bleeding hell, the bastard's waking up.
Harry knew there was duct tape in the bag and pulled out the reel, biting through the ever-so-sticky tape with his sharp yellow teeth.
There, that'll keep you quiet.
Harry poured quite a copious amount of flunitrazepam into James's mouth, followed by a nice single malt, which cascaded down James's esophagus. There was a fair amount of powder on James's cheek, which Harry gently wiped away.
I bleedin' can't stand it when things get messy. We have to have respect for our patients, that's right.
James was soon in a very deep sleep, with no possibility of waking up for a very long time. Harry was ready.
Now, where's me surgical saw? I ain't done a head case before.
Harry inspected the saw. It had to be clean. Have to keep the surgical standards high, otherwise he would not be able to qualify as a surgeon. Even with less than perfect instruments and techniques, it was still possible he could qualify. What with his connections in high places, and large bribes available to all those that matter. He smiled as he thought of all those that might try to stop him. He would see to it that they simply would disappear. Like so many others that had a opposed him. No police, no investigations. His brothers would see to that. The saw looked slightly greasy and had traces of sawdust nestling within each tiny blade.
"Oh, bleeding hell. Better give it a wipe on me overcoat. Got to keep the standards up, that's right."
Harry placed the teeth of the saw gently above the orbital eye socket. That's on the left-hand side. Took a deep breath and gently started to saw.
I know he's sort of asleep, but I must admit that his pain is rather pleasing. Yes.
Blood started to trickle down the side of James's face as the saw continued its journey, deeper and deeper. It was a good job he had placed the tablecloth there, as it would have been a pity if Dorothy's sofa was stained. This was the considerate side of Mr. Grimes' nature. Harry's objective was to completely remove the top of James's skull without damaging his brain. It was certainly a hard task, as the saw continued its circular journey around the head. The last section was the most difficult for Harry, as he had to stretch himself and his large belly, and saw while holding the head up so he could complete the circle. He puffed and panted, but he was getting there. Finally there was a slight cracking sound, as the saw had faithfully completed its task. Harry put the saw down and gently placed his big stubby fingers around the top of James's head. He cupped the top of the sticky skull and gently exerted an upward pressure. There was a sticky squishing sound as he saw that the top would not lift off, perhaps because of cartilage vestige clinging on to both sides of the skin. He was getting excited, as he was really eager to inspect the brain. He had never seen a defaulter's brain before. He wondered if it was different. Before you could say brain box, Harry had the gleaming scalpel in his hand and eagerly cut around the skull, freeing up the task. In his excitement he dropped the scalpel and grasped at the skull. At first it moved very slowly as he twisted from side to side. That partially freed it, and upwards pressure was needed again. Imagine an oak tree, perhaps 100 years old, with deep roots in dry soil. The sound of the skull lifting against quite strong resistance reminded him as he listened to this delightful ripping. The top of the skull now lifted, revealing a slightly pulsating brain with its duramater almost intact. He stared in marvel at this glorious sight. He took out his mobile and took several photos, with and without puncture marks, which he made with his scalpel. He could have made a video of the whole production, but had not yet grasped how to work the video app. Someone was at the front door. Harry knew it would not be the police, so logically it would be Arthur. He left the lifeless body on the sofa and opened the front door.
Arthur, good to see you. Now, take the body to Tilbury Docks like what we agreed, and make sure no bleeder sees you. All right?
Okay, boss. Shall I drop you off at home first?
Yeah, why not?
Oh, what's in the Sainsbury's bag, boss?
Oh, that. Just a little something for me doggies, you know.
The end.